What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you again for another week of Every Day We're Covering, talking the world of college football for the most part, and of course our picks, and we'll recap another wild week of the sport. SJ, we had some fun games this weekend. If you're just a fan of the sport and you like some upsets, we got some of those. It was good to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of the week before we discussed it being kind of like a ho hum or not that exciting. It was pretty much the exact opposite this week here with, like you said, the upsets. Which, as long as your team's not involved, we love to see those upsets. Like as long as it's or it's not a play we're making. Had a couple teams there let us down. What's different? That's the norm, I guess. But we did a pretty good job living up to the show's name, I think, this week. So good games, and then we had some good picks as well. So not a bad combination.
Yeah, really good week on the picks. I mean, we're going 7 out of 10. I think we're doing pretty damn good. So, and
I'm
real
gonna
close,
retire now. Yeah.
real close on a couple others. I was worried there at the beginning of the day. I'm like, oh, here we go again. I'm gonna have another shit week, but actually came back for me on a couple of them. So I can't be too awfully upset. Obviously, yeah, we'd love to be perfect and get them all, but that's usually not how it goes. So we'll get into the recap for you with our picks, and then of course dive into some of those fun games and some of those upsets for you as well. We've got a couple of other topics that are, I guess, related to recent results also on the college football front, and we'll of course then peek ahead for next week also here on the show. As we get rolling, we like to let you know what is keeping us our dulcet tones lubricated for you here on the show. And so I went back to our recent kind of trend here that I guess I started a few weeks ago. Had one of the variety packs there from Sam Adams that had a dunkel in it. And that tasted so good. I was like, I got to pick something else up too. And I saw this on the shelf. It is a popular one as far as when you think of a traditional dunkel. The old German fine folks there with Wursteiner with their traditional dunkel. It's all brewed according to that good old German purity law. It's the good high quality shit, and yeah, it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. How about yourself?
Well, I was a little bit let down. I was looking for. I really wanted. I'm kind of hitting the. I want those. I want the porters. I want the stouts. I want something dark and creamy, if you will. So I was looking for something like that. Real bad. And the store I went to let me down. I don't know. I know it's still been kind of decent. Like winter weather hasn't hit quite yet, at least in my neck of the woods. But I just kind of get into that mood. I need a break from the ales. I want to drink some a little bit more kick, and either maybe I wanted to forget about some stuff for this weekend, or I just wanted to celebrate with a little something heavier. But that didn't work out for me. But I did go to one of your staples here, one of your brands, the Sam Adams boys up there in Northeast, and I got their holiday white ale, so something kind of different out of
Mhm.
the norm here. So I figured that would do just fine. I'm Oktoberfest out already, so I didn't grab that one. They had, I think it was I don't even remember who made it, but there's one Oktoberfest on the shelf still. Shows you how everybody else might be along the same lines because there wasn't many left. But this is supposedly spiced and citrusy. So
Hmm.
I feel I'm getting the citrusy. I'm not quite finding the spice there. So might have to drink a few more to try to get that flavor there at the maybe it's at the end there. I'm just missing it.
Very nice. Yeah, that's probably a nice mix-up, change of pace one there for sure. I will say I do have a Sam Adams here in front of me as well as kind of my backup beer if I run out of one here on the show. Because I saw this on the shelf, and this is one that they traditionally always brew, but I think there was I believe it was last year where they didn't have it out. I guess in one of the traditional packs or whatever, and people were kind of upset about it, but anyways, it's the winter lager, one of their traditionals. It's pretty kind of has that seasonal flavor too. It's a little heavier, but still kind of drinkable and smooth. I really like this one. I had quite a few of them here over the weekend, and yeah, so I got that one sitting there. If I run out of the dunkel here, that'll keep me fueled. But
Not that they're paying us any money or anything, but you bring string of Sam Adams. That cold snap too. I've had that before.
oh
That
baby,
one's that's a good one. That
yeah.
that cold snap will it'll snap you.
Yeah, that one's an all timer for me. I always wait for that time of year. That's a great beer. It's a awesome seasonal, that's for sure. And they do a pretty good job of all those. I'm with you too. I did text a group of buddies over the weekend, and I was like, I'm almost to the point here where I think controversial take. I think the winter lagers and the Dunkels are greater than the Oktoberfest. I've swung to that side of the fence. I just think they're are overall more drinkable. Like you said, I don't. There's something about that Oktoberfest where, yeah, it's good and it's a nice change of pace, but you do wear out on it. I think pretty quick.
It's almost I don't know what not much of a chemist here or whatever you wanna call it. It's something with that, some flavor in there is kinda just it's almost like I was joking, but I was kind of serious when I said it. It's like the pumpkin spice. It's kinda like the Oktoberfest is like the pumpkin spice of beers. Like, it's not that it's bad, it's good in moderation, just a
Hmm.
little bit, but you kinda it seems like you really run its course, real quick. At least that's my take. I like them, but about a couple weeks, and then let's get those stouts and porters rolling because I don't know, I honestly, for several different reasons, I don't. But honestly, if I could drink a stout or porter like on the regular, that's my like go-to beer all the time. I probably would do that. That's one of my favorite. Besides the sour, we know
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
we've covered
We
that.
covered that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I and obviously I'm not a young man anymore, so this is part of it. But I think it is weird as you age. You do feel like I think there's certain of them that just kind of I don't know, your body handles a little bit differently. It seems like,
Yeah.
and it seems
Okay.
like to me the Oktoberfest is one where it's like there must be a lot obviously going on in this beer, and it like is something that kind of sticks. And if you drink too many of them, you're gonna feel it the next day. And I got to thinking about that too. I was like, how bad do some of these people over in Germany and wherever where they have a legit Oktoberfest and they're just getting hammered on this stuff? Like you got to feel like an absolute train wreck after that.
I've probably a lot to do with that, with I guess would be the sauerkraut or like the cabbage and
There you
that type
go.
of thing, to kind of that roughage to clean you out so it doesn't hang around there. But that was another thing I was going to mention. I know you talked about the next day hangover, but you got to watch out for those bubble guts as well when it comes to some of these beverages.
Hmm. Yeah, it can get a little rough, but yeah, no, I don't know. I just feel like especially that Dunkel. I don't know. I'm on the Dunkel kick right now.
Hey,
It's good
hey,
stuff.
that's that one. There's going to be no argument for me on that one. That's kind of a seems like maybe it just took us a while to catch on here in this country, but it just seems like it's kind of hard to go wrong no matter who's making that one.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into our picks here, and we do have a couple other topics, and I got a slight, I guess, disturbed rant that I'll go on to about my team pissing me off over the weekend. But the good news here, well, I'll start with the bad ones first because like I said, we missed a few. Well, we'll go with the misses here first before we go for the hits. The first one let me down. And again, this is one of those games where it was like the way it was going. I'm like, all right, this is probably gonna just edge out. I'm gonna nail this one just enough. But no, Minnesota decides that they're gonna turn the ball over in their own territory a couple of times late in the game and let Rutgers not only not let them cover, but not let them win the game. Rutgers wins it 26-19. Just one of those where to me, the trajectory was the opposite direction, and that's what you get sometimes with these unpredictable games in college football.
Well, I mean, the funny thing always to me is, and I guess probably not too funny for Minnesota, but it's like, everybody kind of wants to build them up, like, oh man, they just keep winning, they do this and that, but it's the consistency portion of it that I'm just like, and I'm not saying that they're the only team that does this, but in this situation, this is who we're talking about, so it's them. But to me, that's what more of like separates like the programs that are actually like going somewhere or can be consistent is that just being week in and week out, and that's the difference because it doesn't seem like you can rely on them. Like, I mean, what did they win? 2 or 3 in a row, maybe even 4. I need to go back and look at
Yeah,
their
it's four, I
schedule, but
think. Yeah.
and they had, I mean, beaten decent teams, you thought, and you're like, okay, it just that bringing it every week that's why the teams that are like in the top 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, that's why they're there, is just
Hmm.
because that ability to do that, and then also just doing it year in and year out. I think that to me that gives like when you're talking about this is more of a discussion of like programs when you're doing your preseason, looking at who might be back this year and who's going to be there. And to me, I'm always going to lean towards teams that 5, 6, 7 seasons have continued to do it, beat who they're supposed to beat. You're not going to win every game. Nobody is anymore. It doesn't matter if
Hmm.
even if you're the 5-star loaded, too deep at every position. You're just not going to win every game. I mean, we've seen upsets this week, last week, the week before. Every week there's somebody that goes down that's on paper talent wise is better than the team that beat them. But You got to play the game, and sometimes you just have a bad day. Sometimes somebody has a game plan better than yours, and that's just the way it goes. So
Hmm.
just that consistency is just like, to me, I was like, I didn't think it was a bad play because you could see it happening, but when it doesn't happen, you're like, here they kind of like, oh, here it goes again, like it happened again,
Hmm.
and that that's kind of makes it even more that maddening because I don't know who's next on the schedule, but they'll go and beat somebody like a Penn State or just somebody that's like in the upper echelon of the league, and then they go and lose to like one of the. I know Rutgers was thought to be have a good season, but they're kind of one of the bottom feeders after
Hmm.
all this year. So that's what, and I'm sure their fans or have it worse than we do because we're just making a pick here or there. But it's just got to be a little bit frustrating when you see kind of this trajectory, and then it's just like, never mind, we're just going to go back to who knows what we're going to get week to week.
Yeah. The same pretty much exact story with the next one that I missed on as well. Texas Tech
Yep, yep.
getting 4 at home against Colorado, and I thought, hey, I mean, if this is a loss, I thought it would be like, here's a last minute field goal kind of thing
Right.
that they're going to lose this game.
Or Colorado scores and goes for two at the end and beats them by a point, something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And honestly, for a while, the game was shaping up pretty well for them. It was in their favor for quite a chunk of it until kind of midway through that second half, and they just seemed to lose traction, and then they couldn't get back on track. I'll give Colorado credit. I did not see this season coming 1 ounce at all. Granted, it hasn't necessarily been amazing win after win, but they're finding ways to get wins, and they've put themselves right in the thick of the Big 12 championship conversation now. Certainly, we know that their dudes are dudes. We've always said that. But they're carrying the load, and then everybody else, it seems like around them, has started to play a little bit better, and they've made the team around them better, and they're getting wins. So tip of the cap, I guess, there to the Buffs, but another disappointing, like you said, consistent wise for Texas Tech. I think if they would have came out and just played their game and played it solid for 4 quarters, they not only cover but probably win this thing, and that's just not how it played out. It's the same story for them.
The funny thing is that like when and I know they've had different coaches, different players, it's not the same, but Texas Tech has kind of been known for like kind of a wild style, if you want to call it the air raid, what they were. I don't know if they got a name for whatever they are now, but no matter who's been in like at the head coach position there, it's always been something kind of like, I don't necessarily want to call it wacky, but just like a little different. They're kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even know if it's like people following course, but it's just the fact that like they're not just gonna do kind of like your typical pro style offense, or they're just gonna kind of do something a little bit out of sorts. So when it's working, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, these guys are just they're gurus, they're geniuses. Like, oh, look at they probably they got a playbook is like the freaking yellow pages when we used to get those, and now it's just like, well, yeah, they got too many plays, like it doesn't work, you got to simplify, so
Mm-hmm.
it depends on the perspective. I was a little surprised that they lost to the fact of how the game started. I thought they kind of
Yeah.
got up to a decent start, and looked like, oh, maybe they're going to be in it. But I know we'll probably touch on this later with another teams happening. But this, I mean, these kind of off the field stuff, like mid game or when things happen like that, I think that didn't really change the game because at that point I think it had been kind of decided. But it definitely didn't help like anything. Just like, I don't know. I guess we're just going to make this like a weekly thing of like, becoming English soccer hooligan fans and just
Mm-hmm.
going ape shit when you don't get that, when things don't go your way. And I mean, that's like a kind of like, I remember being like a young kid as a Nebraska fan. There was like an old school like uh freaking Texas Tech coach kind of pulled a Tom Osborne there, getting on the microphone telling people to stop throwing crap. I know, like I think it's game. It's like it was either Colorado or Oklahoma back in the late '80s, early '90s, where the tradition then was to throw oranges whenever you made the Orange Bowl, and so they were chucking them back then. And I mean, that's a little different. It wasn't like they were mad at a call, but same thing where the McGuire at Tech got on the mic and said, "Freaking stop throwing shit." Base. I mean, like he literally said that, and like, and then they're like, whatever happened, they stopped, I guess. But I don't know. This I think it wasn't Herbstreit wouldn't have been on that call, but somebody on one, he would have been LSU, right? Because he kind of let him have it a little bit. Like he's usually kind of like the middle of the road. He's not going to really ruffle too many feathers. He just
Mm-hmm.
kind of plays that company line pretty good. But he was maybe maybe he's out of sorts with of course, losing his good friend there,
Yeah.
Ben.
Hmm.
So that could put anybody on edge. I don't blame him for that. God, but that was a
That was a
that was a hell
tearjerker.
of a trip. We can get that was, man. I was like, I don't know how he made it through that voiceover, but
Yeah.
he no he just said straight up like this getting got to stop this. Something's got to be done. But what are you gonna do? Like we we don't have much to say else for what we already said. I think it's just that 80 whatever how many thousand 50 60 70,000 versus few hundred security. What are you going to do to stop it? It's just
Hmm.
and it's gonna the bad thing is kind of what you mentioned last week. I think is now it's gonna like kind of have that ripple effect to actually like fans that are there for the game and just kind of want to enjoy themselves and everything. Now you're gonna start seeing restrictions, limits, all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. Just because what else can you do? As administration, there's only so much you can do to like stop a certain behavior. So where do you go from here? It's like yeah, you want to stop it, but the question of how you do it is not like an easy one to answer.
Yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate. Like you said, we just continue to keep seeing this. It seems like now week after week, and we were afraid that that was going to become the trend, and it has. But yeah, well, I don't know. Again, what the answer is, I don't have it. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But at some point, yeah, there's going to have to be some things done to try to make this go away and make things safer for everybody involved. This isn't just about
Mhm.
players and whatever. It's about the fans that are there to enjoy it. It's about coaches and support staff, cheerleaders, people that are just there to work. It's all everybody involved. So it needs to stop, and we'll see if somebody does come up with a good idea at some point to make it go away. The other game that we did come up short in, and this one had some unhappy fans at the end of it too. I don't know. Oh man, I don't know. How, there's probably not a worse feeling as a fan than what transpired at the end of this BYU Utah game, because it was a great game, but for all respects. During the course of the contest, back and forth. They battled. You kind of expected that might be the case when these teams get together. You kind of one of those things where they say throw out the records. It's true. I mean, it really did play that way, and Utah just absolutely had just a fire lit under themselves at the end of this defensively. And that's what makes it hurt that much more, I think, is you made the plays. They made the plays to win the game, and it comes down to a fourth down where they get back there and sack Retzlaff within 2 seconds, it seemed like, and then they get bailed out with a holding call that I've been told I haven't gotten to see the. I wanted to see a closer look at it because they never showed one on the video on the live broadcast feed. It was just the wide shot, so you never really knew how bad of a call it was. But it did appear like it was pretty, one of those things you would not call, and especially I'm never one to say swallow the whistle if it's a penalty, but if it's one of those things where it's like a really ticky tack thing, yeah, you're not going to call it, especially the way the play unfolded. I mean, he had no chance to throw that ball no matter what. Like, they got there, and that's what amazed me. I was like, was there time for a penalty? Because he had the ball how many seconds? Like, not even could even be possible. But yeah, they get bailed out by it, and then give BYU credit after that. They, of course, make some plays, some big throws to get down the field, and then kick this field goal to end up getting the victory and walk it off. But yeah, fans went from game over, celebration to
Yeah.
oh crap, and then doing the surrender cobra at the end. Like I just that's got to be a wild. That'd be a wild stadium to be in. That's for sure.
As someone who had BYU to cover the number, which they didn't, just through the first half, I was like, man, this ain't even. I didn't even think they could make a game of it. Honestly, they were totally getting outplayed. They maybe between the 20s they were just chucking it around, and then once they get close, they couldn't do anything to get it in the end zone. Utah, that was what I mean. The injuries we understood, and we knew that was that's got to be a factor, but. That was the Utah you thought they would be like the whole season.
Hmm.
So it was there. Just took that to come out. Not to make this about this show about. I've brought it up twice. This will be the last time I'll hit my limit though. But my to be about my fandom. But all I could see in my head when they made that call was that little jackass Mac Brown holding up one finger in the Big 12 championship, and this was a Big 12 game, right?
Yeah.
So that's all I could think. It wasn't to Texas's favor, but I don't know if anybody's looked lately, but BYU is the highest ranked team in the conference and undefeated. So not to be a conspiracy theory, I know I'm a tinfoil hat. This is a guy that picked BYU to win and has done regularly. But I do think they may be we're overzealous there with the flag on that one. Is a good way to put it. In the Utah AD is was right there in line with pretty much everybody else, and you can't even blame him. But this point was brought up, and I think that's probably I was trying to rack my brain too. Is when has like an AD kind of I guess crashed the press conference, if for lack of a better term, to and I would be like, man, that's the kind of support you'd want for your team and your program and your school. So it's a good thing. I mean, it sucks to you knew there was going to be some type of like whatever if discipline, if that's what they want to call it, with the fine. But I mean, I guess maybe I wish stuff like that would happen more often, and maybe even from the other side, from the zebras, put a little mic in their face and let's hear
Yeah.
some truth there, because I mean, I'd appreciate the fact that he was kind of stand by his team, and I know it was you're never going to win in that case. That
Hmm.
the conference is going to have the final word, but
Hmm.
I do appreciate him kind of going out there and having his team's back.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on that whole scenario too, though, only because of kind of the way that the previous interactions have gone with Utah. I get it. Yeah, you in the moment you're pissed. I've seen my the team that I root for, their AD get in trouble for saying things before or after a game, and when I thought, I obviously supported him because I thought he was right too. But the thing that I wish he wouldn't have done is he kind of made the comment kind of like a veiled thing about how, well, we were excited to join this conference.
Yeah.
Like, bro, like, okay, we had it out from you for day one. Like, and honestly, the thing that was annoying with Utah in the first place, at least from their fan base perspective, was they thought they were too good for the Big 12. They didn't want to be in the conference. They thought there was better things coming, and they wanted to kind of wait and, oh, well, we're here now, but once the ACC or whoever calls, we'll be gone, and don't worry about it. That's the thing that kind of irks me a little bit, is like, okay, you're just being like a prima donna about the league, and I don't know that it's necessarily totally about that. Yeah. I mean, the call sucked. I agree, but it wasn't. Let's hope it wasn't malicious, like you're saying. Where it's trying to help the
I'm not
league.
making a claim. That's the first thought that popped in my head. I'm
Yeah.
like, here we go again, just because of
Hmm.
things that I've had to do. I'm
Yeah,
just
I
like,
get
oh
it.
shit. That's not a good look, I guess, the way to put it.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wish he would have framed it differently.
Yeah.
Kind of
Well,
like, yeah.
yeah, someone in that position, you got to be. I mean, yeah, you got to get your frustrations out, and that's understandable. But uh, make it about that game, and not. It's not the bigger picture thing in that moment. And as that, like, we're just guys with mics here. We can say what the fuck we want. But someone that actually is like in a position where you're leading the athletic department of like a pretty. I guess you consider it a major university. I think so like
Hmm.
you got to be a little bit more adept at things like that, and I'm sure it's just like probably people his right hand man or whatever, or people like his team probably tried to talk him out of it, but I'm sure he felt the need to go up there, and that part of it's fine, but yeah, make it about just that call in that game because it was missed, and
Yeah.
I mean that's all it needs to be said. I mean I think you can let your frustrations go without making it a some kind of a soap opera, if you will.
Yeah. And I get it, like what you're saying too about like, that fires your team up, or that he's there to support, you got your back. I get that. I mean, 100%. But they did come down on him, gave him a $40,000 fine, public reprimand, whatever, blah blah blah. They did say though that it is kind of in the history of the league, it is a little bit of a stiff penalty, because three athletic directors' fines of note in the past decade were all $25,000 and not the 40 grand. So I guess they're trying to do their best to maybe bite back a little bit.
And maybe that's like that inflation thing they keep
Yeah, it's
hearing
true.
about. I don't
It's
know.
true.
They
True.
that cost more to get the eggs. You got to have a bigger fine.
Exactly. So yeah, interesting scenario, wild game. Certainly, yeah. I mean, huge implications for BYU. I mean, they lose that game, yeah. Now they're in a different situation. But with the win, they're still obviously now very much in the driver's seat in the Big 12 conference. So, be interesting to see how the rest of it shakes out. And yeah, tough one for Utah fans to take for sure. So those are the ones that we lost as far as our picks are concerned. Let's go to the ones that we came out smelling like roses on it. First one, Georgia at Ole Miss, and of course this is notable not just because of what we ended up with as far as the hit, but of course the way the game ended. Under 55.5 is what I was going with there, and it did stay there. 38 points ends up being the total. Ole Miss 28-10, the victory over Georgia. Old Lane Kiffin finally gets his signature win. We'd kind of talked about this before, and I think he's been hammered on it for a long time. Is could never win the big one kind of thing at Ole Miss, and they just played better almost the entire game than Georgia. Georgia was a little bit out of sorts. The defense was really good for Ole Miss, and exciting victory for their fan base. Wasn't one of those ridiculous things again where they had to get like fans, I think, off the field for a minute and then back on and all that crap. But yeah, heck of a win for Ole Miss, that's for sure.
Easy for me to say because I don't really have any stake in it, but I was in my mind I was thinking it's only a matter of time for Ole Miss breaks through one of these times. And I'm sure their fans and didn't maybe feel that way. It's like, oh crap, like are we gonna we're gonna blow it again? Are we gonna choke again? Just the way that Georgia played last week against Florida, and that was a pick that we had on our list last week. I was like, there's no way I'm even messing with this. So when you made that unders, I was like, that's a great pick because they're not. If they win, it's going to be ugly as crap, and if they lose, they're probably going to get beat the way they got beat. So that's I didn't have any confidence. I think Georgia's got some big problems there. They still have a couple of tough games left, and I don't see them. I kind of after this game, and not saying it's like done, but in my mind, I'm kind of they're out of. I think they're out of that conference. Well, definitely the playoff, but I think they're even out of the conference race. So I don't think they got much of a chance left here. I don't know what happened. It seems like they have the talent still. The quarterback was supposed to be kind of the can't miss type of type of player. So just maybe the league's catching up with them, and the cycle's shifting over because that seems what it is. I know everybody's unbeatable until they get beat, right? So that's just kind of how it always goes. It's like you can't see them ever losing, and then all of a sudden they can't win.
Yeah.
So it's just that's how it. Even with Alabama, I mean, I know they kind of rebounded and had a pretty good win, this week or whatever. But who would have thought they'd had 2 losses at this point? 3 or 4 years ago, like they were going through the regular season, like not even being tested. Now it's like they've got a battle, every couple 3 weeks. So it's just that's the nature of the game these days.
Yeah, well, and I know it's been talked about, and I don't have the numbers in front of me officially, but there is it's going to be a damn mess in that league because they're saying that what it could be.
Well, the thing with
7 teams.
Yeah.
There's 7 teams that could be tied at 10-2, possibly, if things were to go a certain way. That's just wild.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's like the tricky thing is the tiebreakers, considering that you can't, or even if you want, I mean, you don't, but even if you wanted to, you can't play every team. But I will find it interesting that, to me, I thought this was a little bit of and I know it'll probably change too, but as of the latest AP poll, 4 of the top 5 are out of the Big Ten. So, that's maybe a little SEC shift from that league taking over. I'm not saying they don't have good teams down there, but that I think a lot of people would be surprised if you just said that 3 or 4 years ago that, in a few years for the top 5. And I know it's not the same Big Ten, but it still is a little bit. So even to me, I was a little surprised to see that. I was like, and I watch most of those teams regularly. I just like, whoa, that was a little bit kind of caught you off guard there.
Yeah, it's definitely a change. Yeah, a little bit of a mix up of the guard for sure. So yeah, interesting game, and we did hit on that under. Jumping over to one of yours, it was also a wild game. This Miami Georgia Tech affair. Under 64 is what you're looking for. It got to 51 was the final, and not at all like we thought probably was going to go down. Georgia Tech wins it outright, 28-23. Another wild field storming that took place there for that one. Heck of a win for Georgia Tech, and I don't know. I mean, you did have that feeling that at some point Miami's going to lose. They're just testing with fire, it seems like, week after week. But on the other hand, the last couple of weeks, it finally felt like, well, they've starting to put teams away a little bit. They pull away. They have that explosiveness that you're waiting to see. But yeah, didn't show up on Saturday.
Glad you brought up the fire because I mean you're the only one who can see this, but I have this immaculate fireplace in the background burning. And Miami was literally playing with fire like almost every week, so you knew it was at some point it was going to get him. This week I wasn't feeling that way, other than the fact that I thought maybe it could be lower scoring for the fact that just the way Georgia Tech plays is it's always an ugly game pretty much,
Hmm.
no matter who you're going up against. Even if they lose, it's still like a weird random score, like friggin' 23-9 or something goofy
Yeah.
like that. But I was I mean they got down pretty good there. Miami did, so I was just like, oh, and then they started kind of making that rally there. And early in the fourth, I think they cut it to like what was it, like 28-23 or 28-24, whatever the hell. They were within 4 or 5 points with like still about 10 minutes to go. So with the total in mind, I was a little nervous at
Yeah.
one point, just knowing how fast they can score. I was like, oh crap, they put up a couple touchdowns here, and then we're in trouble there. But Georgia Tech, I mean, the thing to me that kind of was more impressive, I guess, than just the win itself. Obviously stands alone, but they're at the end there, the last 4 or 5 minutes, they got a couple first downs late, and
Hmm.
even I think converted a fourth down or two, at least
Yeah.
one, and then just held onto the ball and didn't give Miami a chance
Hmm.
after that late interception. I think that Cam Ward threw. So that to me, that's kind of how you win those games. Obviously, it's make it kind of when somebody knows you're going to run the ball or whatever, when someone knows what you're going to do and you still do it. That's when you really do deserve that win and you're the better team. So Georgia Tech definitely proved that. And I mean, Miami can win the rest of their games and be right in it, but
Yeah.
just that way they play is it's kind of like just the coaches say this all the time, and it's not always true even when they say it. But I think it is a little bit of a kind of a what do you want to call it? Like mirror their quarterback, just how he just kind of went around the pocket, kind of crazy, kind of
Hmm.
just off the cuff, and the team seems to kind of follow that lead of oh, don't worry, and it's a good mindset to have. It's like you never feel like you're out of a game, but you're also how often have they felt like they're in control of a game against like a like opponent? Maybe against a Bethune Cookman or a Florida A&M, yeah, you're fine because you're scoring 60, 70 points. But within the conference, they've won more than they've lost. Obviously, this is the first game they've lost.
Hmm.
But how often have they been like, oh, this one's smooth sailing? They've kind of had a little bit of a herky jerky type of season.
Hmm.
And I know 9-1 or 8-1, whatever they are, like a lot of teams would sign up for that. So
Yeah.
it's something to be mad sad about. Just we didn't see the loss coming. Put it that way.
Yeah. But yeah, I like you said, it was kind of that Miami scored, Tech responded and scored, and then Miami scored again. I'm like, oh shit, he might
Like
be in trouble
yeah,
now.
even early it was like 14-10 or
Yeah.
14-7 or within like the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game. I'm like, this is not going the way. This is like the exact opposite. We don't need this.
Yeah.
So that was there was moments in that game. I don't. I know when we get these picks, it's like easy to be like, oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm just being honest. Like I'm not always like, but throughout the game goes, man, I'm up and down just like anybody would be that just it's more the competitive side. I just want to get them right and help everybody out, give good advice. So
Yeah.
that's where it comes out. I'm not putting my life savings on any of this
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. No, no, yeah, no
I
kidding.
just want to try to give the best,
Yeah.
best picks we can. And of
Best picks.
course, we want to be right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
human nature.
Yeah. Have some fun, make a few bucks along the way. That's what it's about. Um, the armed forces still having some fun. Army get your cover there. They were,
Well, ugly though.
yeah, it was ugly. Yeah, 4.5. He went at 14-3 over North Texas. I when you made that play, I was like, I think that's a good pick, but North Texas, one of those kind of like pesky teams,
Yep.
especially at home. So I didn't know how they would go, but I was surprised that they held them just to 3 points. I mean, I would have thought it would have been a little bit different score than it was, but either way, they get it done and to continue a terrific season that they've got rolling so far. Another team that well, actually, I'll get this one out of the way here first. This one wasn't looking so good for a while, and then it caught up. Missouri beats Oklahoma 30-23, ends up being the final score. 53 points ends up being the mark there, and you were looking for the overs at 42.5. And the way the game started, I was like, I don't know, either of these teams are going to
No
score.
way. Yeah, it was like 10-9 at halftime, I think, or something goofy like that. And it was it was a little bit rainy, a little, a little sloppy. I don't think, I know there's some injuries, and I just don't think either team is really that good, or at least
Yeah.
consistently that good.
Mm-hmm.
So that factors in. But I mean, you would have thought that's a pretty low number, is more what I was looking at. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're just going to I thought Missouri just like leaned heavy on the run, and of course they end up scoring enough, so it didn't matter. But at in halftime, I kind of gave up on it for a little bit, to tell you the truth, and I was like, I'll just go over to BYU and then I'll come back, and then check back there about middle third quarter, and I think right when I happened to flip the one of the screens over was when not the fumble recovery to win it, but it was the touchdown before where they tied it up at 23 all. And of course, that got the overs right there. So that, I wasn't necessarily cheering for the touchdown, but we like to, we were cheering for the pick. So when
Hmm.
I saw that, I was like, what, 23-23? I was like, what happened? And that's not even the highest scoring, but compared to how like the game was
Yeah.
going, I was surprised that anybody cracked 20, because that game was ugly. That
Hmm.
was a real bad game.
Yeah.
And who cares if you win? But when you lose, I'm sure that's one you don't want to have to watch in the film room the next day, or whenever day after, or 2 days after, whenever they happen to do it. Because I'm sure, yeah, Oklahoma's going to have to. They got to make some changes. I think it's going to be
Hmm.
staff first, of course. Head coach is always going to save their butt, which we'll probably bring up here later with another school. But yeah, they're not doing well. Obviously, to make an understatement, but it's seems like to me the surprising thing is they've always like, even I think their coaching has honestly lacked for several years now. I don't think it's just a thing on Venables even before him, but the talent was always could kind of like hide that and
Hmm.
overcome it. And now
Yeah.
I couldn't tell, besides the quarterback. I don't, and it depends which one's playing quarterback. I guess I know both their names because they switch. But other than that, I couldn't really name you very many players on the Sooners team. And when you go back to a few years ago, you could go from freaking from CeeDee Lamb all the way. You could name all
Yeah.
Broyles. You could name all these guys. And now it's
Hmm.
like I don't really don't know their skilled players outside of the quarterback.
That's a good point. That is a really good point. Things, yeah, have really changed. It's going to be an uphill battle to get that back where they want it to be. That's for sure. Um, another game that you were kind of, I think you were spot on picking the week that this was going to happen here. You knew that maybe at some point Indiana's going to have a rough go of it, and they sure did against Michigan. They end up pulling it off, still get the win. 20-15, but it was in doubt there for quite a while, and Michigan was getting a lot of points, over 2 touchdowns at 14.5, and ended up being a nice hit there for you as well. You saw that Indiana possible letdown coming.
Well, and the talent thing too, what I mentioned about with Oklahoma, I thought that might have give Michigan a shift, because that's kind of what they're living on right now is the talent they got, because they don't have a damn lick of coaching on that staff. I don't care if it's freaking Wink or whatever you want to call him, or the defensive damn coordinator is. You wear a cutoff shirt, man, doesn't make you a good coach. There's a reason. I mean, it's like he's been all these places. Well, yeah, because he gets fired every place he's been. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I mean, obviously you've been able to stay employed, so you do know either you know something or you're able to convince people you know something. Either way, you're getting paid, so good job to you. But I mean, to me, it's a talent thing, and I thought with Indiana, they've been able to scheme a lot of people, and that's
Hmm.
kind of been there, and that's what you got to do sometimes. So I don't think that, I'm not saying they don't have good players, especially at quarterback. He's got a hell of an accurate arm. The quarterback for Indiana does, but I thought this was the case where scheme wouldn't be enough just to to roll over the competition like they have been, and also just playing the odds of it. If I think they said about 12 times on the freaking radio broadcast I was listening to, but they're even in championship years you got to have these close games.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was that, and I was thinking that too. So I just like here's a chance, kind of lines up for that. I would have liked I was a little my confidence was only wavered in the fact that it was a home game for Indiana. So I was like, if it was at Michigan, then I might have went ahead and picked the underdog. Honestly,
Hmm.
I might have went with straight up. But being a road game, I don't know that they have that greatest home atmosphere, but it always helps playing at home, no matter if you're playing at the lake in Northwestern, or if you're playing down in Tuscaloosa. The
Hmm.
home always helps a little bit. So
Yeah.
I thought that would have really bumped him over the top, but still a good cover. And honestly, I thought Michigan could have won it. So a little coaching issues there with some timeout calls or lack thereof. So man, that'll be something I'm sure they'll be talking about here for a few weeks.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I mean, atmospheres always good when you're winning. So
Yeah.
usually makes people go show up in the stands. So
Well, and
yeah,
with the
they're
angst they've had with their basketball program, I'm
well,
sure it's kind
true.
of a welcome.
Yeah,
They might, that's going to be the new thing here is going to be
yeah.
a lot of those pinstripe pants are going to be made into like football type pants. Maybe
There
they'll
you go.
start wearing those football
Football
now.
warm
We'll
ups.
see.
Yeah, there you go. I'm gonna stay in the Big Ten here. The Penn State Nittany Lions laid one on Washington, and I had the points on that bad boy. They were laying 13.5, which I did think was kind of a big margin, but I just thought the way that the teams were trending and the fact that I think Penn State is much more talented, and the way that I've seen Washington kind of crumble in the second half of a few games that they haven't been in. That's where I thought this would go, and that's kind of how it played out. So another good win there for Penn State. They stay in that Big Ten conversation. And then Oregon, Maryland ended up making me bite my fingernails.
That was
39-18 is the final, and I needed under 58. Well, 57 will do.
yeah, that counts. Yeah, that's all you need. That's why it's called every day we're covering, not every day we're winning games outright.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of a long title, anyways. But yeah, I mean, Oregon kind of did what you thought they were going to do. It's just a little bit more surprising that to me that Maryland scored that many points. I guess, and that's not a ton. But I thought probably thinking more of like a 42-7 type game or a 42-14. So, but either way, you still got the cover. So that was when you get on those we told you when you get on the streaming apps and the Friday night games. I don't know if I gotta I don't think I didn't like coin this or trademark it, but I was a little bit caught me off guard when I was watching or had the broadcast on for the UCLA Iowa game there on Fox. And is it Helfrich that does the studio on Friday nights?
Yeah.
Oregon. He said Freaky Friday, and I'm pretty sure I said that on the show.
You
So I'm
did,
like,
yeah.
bro, if you're listening, shoot us a line or something. No, I don't think he was. It was just like I was like, damn, I don't. Not that it's that like, it's not that creative or clever or anything like that. But I was just like, well, you see, he knows what's up too. So, props to him. Maybe that's why he's on TV making probably, not as much money as he was coaching, but I'm sure he's a lot less stressful of a life and enjoying himself a little bit more. So you can tell he's a smart guy now too.
Yeah, healthy. Yeah, he's doing well. I'm sure. That's that is funny. It turned out to be pretty freaky there for Iowa, unfortunately, in that one.
I want, man. I'm sad. That's one. There's always one or two we have to leave out there just because we're kind of doing the top 5 of the week. But that's one I was like, man, I really wish I would. I mean, don't get me wrong. We do more than 5, for ourselves.
Well, yeah.
But for the show, I was like, man, I really wish I had put that out there for the peeps because that'd have been a good money line there. But I would have took the points, so I can't be too upset about that.
Yeah. And in that Oregon game, I will admit I did have them as part of another parlay with the actual line, just because I thought, it would be one of those like 35-7, 42-0 type of games, and so at the end it was like, well, which one do I root for here? I got myself in a pickle, but it's all right. We went with the show, and that's good for me. So something you said a moment ago about another game kind of was, I think, a good lead into. I just had a little bit of a side rant about my team here this past weekend. Iowa State went to Arrowhead and absolutely laid a turd against Kansas. I will say that it does not shock me that at some point that Kansas team was going to play a good football game, because there was a reason that a lot of people expected them to be good coming into the year. They've got a crap load of like 6-year seniors. They're experienced guys. They're talented, but they had not figured out how to put it together so far this year. So usually when that trend starts, it continues and you don't overcome it. But they had one hell of a week, and I'll tip my cap to them for playing well. But also, you were kind of talking about the. When you have good seasons, you have to have those types of, games where you win maybe an ugly one or whatever. And that's just what kills me about, teams that haven't had that success. Obviously Iowa State doesn't have a history of having a strong, football program. They don't have like these one few seasons that you can go back and look at and say, oh, that was the one. That was a hell of a season. And I think part of that mindset is just something that you at some point you have to get over it. Like, you have to live up to the moment a little bit. Yeah, nobody expected you to be, 7-0 to start the season, but at some point too, you got to embrace that and be like, okay, well, this is it. We're gonna go win these games now. And just have that that mentality. I got some feedback from a couple of other fans, and somebody had brought up, it's to him, from his view, it was like, well, those teams, they just have better athletes. He's like, Tech in Kansas, and like, I I said, to a degree, just because of the injuries that I know that Iowa State has right now and the like wealth of young guys that are playing, yeah, okay, maybe I agree with that just a little bit because of that situation, but on an overall scale, no, I don't buy that. I don't believe it. Even if so, like you said, sometimes teams, you find your ways that you can win, and if it's scheme, then fine. That's what you do, and that's how you do it. And then of course you develop guys too. I mean, that's how you get good as a program that's not going to get the 4-star, 5-star guys. You develop kids, and I don't think that that's any different to me at Iowa State than it is at Kansas, for example. Like they don't have a history of being this powerhouse school either. So I don't know. That just kind of irked me a little bit, and I think for a lot of teams, and even if you're a team that maybe does have a history and you're just in a lull right now, how do you change that mindset?
Well, not exactly. I was just gonna say I can relate to you from like in the same mindset, at least as different situations. But Nebraska's deal right now is they can't get to that 6 win and get that bowl game, but they've, of course, decades of just that was a given. I think it was like almost 50 years in a row they were in a bowl game.
Mhm.
So it's just like, that's the thing. And now it's just getting over that point of being like, and the thing to me is like, as fans, we have no like, of course we invest a lot of time, energy, money, of course, tons of money. But as far as like, we can't really have an impact on the game beyond that. And if we're like frustrated to the point where it's like, you like, aren't you tired of this? Like at some point, don't you just be like, okay, who cares, enough? Like, we're just going to go win this game.
Mhm.
If you're thinking that, wouldn't you think the players would be like, who cares? We're just going to go do this. And that's our goal. And that's all we're focused on. So that, to me, that's like where the frustration is, no matter if you're, you know, losing to like a team that you shouldn't be losing to record wise, or if you're trying to like get over some whatever curse people want to call it, or some whatever
Yeah,
that you're trying to get past
juju.
that point. Then yeah, exactly. Then to me it's all the same. And I don't that sometimes I think the talent thing's just like an easy excuse, because
Yeah.
if it was just a talent thing, like you wouldn't play the games. You just look and be like, well, this guy's taller, faster, stronger. You guys are gonna automatically win.
Hmm.
Like not every team that has the best talent is going to be winner. Not even teams that recruit the best have the best players. I mean, you look at late. I mean, this year Miami's good, but how long have they been awful? And they've had
Yeah.
I mean, you look at UCLA. They're finally putting it together. They obviously had the talent, but they were losing to almost Hawaii a couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago, and now they're beating the quote unquote team who has their identity and knows who they are in Iowa.
Hmm.
So like that's I mean it doesn't
Hmm.
that to me that's just like an easy thing. Like, well, they have better players. Well, that I mean if that's the case, just quit now. Like, don't even play.
Yeah. But if that's
I
the
mean,
case, Iowa State would have never beat Oklahoma or Texas or any of those schools ever. Like,
right, yeah, and it's like of course you want the best talent you can get, but you got what you have, and that's your squad. And I don't think you win the first whatever it was 7 or 8, whatever you get without having like either a good team or competent coaching, a mix of it along with talent. So and it's like the fact that you're gonna at that point it's like I guess maybe the mindset is just getting of that every week everyone wants to take you down because you're the big dog at this point.
yeah.
You're the one that's got the lower a top 5, top 7, top 10, whatever next to your name. So maybe you just maybe be getting used to that is the trick of it too, and knowing that like you can't really have an off day if you want to like get to that highest level,
Hmm.
that or maybe accomplish something you never accomplished, because I think that would be enough in itself just to be like this has never been done. Let's be the team that does it.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, and also to me, in the end, it's just like when every time you line up, and of course, it's easy to like it should be simple, but I don't know if that's the case with everybody. It's like, don't you want to beat the person across from you if it's football, basketball, freaking hopscotch, whatever the hell you're doing? Like,
Hmm.
don't. I mean, if you're competing in anything, I mean, I think that's like the baseline. The first thing there is you want to win. I mean, I think that's otherwise. I don't know. Maybe go do something else. I don't know. Like it seems to be like the with anybody that if you work that hard to get just to that college level at a D1 school, like in a Power Four conference, if that's what we call them now, you got to be competitive enough and just to want to win. And if you get outplayed, that's one thing. But I mean, I saw the score. I think it was like 31-13. They were down at one point. Is that right? And I was just
Hmm.
like, what the hell? Like that's one of those you're like something was off because I didn't get to see it. I was out watching my son's game, but I was just like I didn't even think, and I looked. I was like,
Yeah. Oh.
and I refreshed them. That's what it is. Like what? I don't know what the hell's going on there
Yeah.
because I can't see it, but
Hmm.
obviously not good.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the other, because somebody else, brought it back perspective wise to me too, and said, like, yeah, you do look at the season as a whole, and if you went on a run where you were you're 7-2, you've got to win over a rival, you've been playing pretty good, wouldn't you take that at this point? Well, hell yeah, 100%. I'm not saying that, like, all is lost into the world, whatever. They still have a lot of their big goals in front of them, but I'm just saying that when that opportunity is on the table, at some point you've got to take advantage of it when it is a possibility. When I know it's a possibility, like I know you can win that game. Like it's not something that's unattainable. That's what's frustrating about it. And the things that happened in the game was like too. It was just like scheme things that were just like absolute garbage. Like how is this guy wide open? Like how do you send the corner blitz and then the safety apparently didn't get the message that that's what we're doing and he doesn't play on that side of the field? Like just stupid shit, like you gotta. I don't know. That's frustrating as a fan, and I'm sure the coaches obviously they're just as pissed off, but like that's on you. You gotta get these guys in the right spot, even if they are a bunch of young dudes out there filling in for somebody else. Like they need to know what the hell they're doing. So yeah, I mean everybody's got to be better, but it just frustrating, I guess. I just thought that was kind of I don't know, an interesting angle to look at it from a team, because Indiana comes to my mind. Like, if they were to stumble down the stretch here and lose a few, I think that's the same exact kind of thing that I would be thinking in my head. Like they just haven't been there before and aren't doing it. So I don't know. We'll see what direction it goes here down the rest of the way. Um, other game or other news that we did want to bring up here too. We just alluded to like teams that should have a lot of talent that don't. Florida State, they continue to be very bad at football, and the Seminoles lost their sixth straight game, 52-3 at Notre Dame, and they've decided that they're going to do some house cleaning. Mike Norvell had fired offensive coordinator, offensive line coach Alex Atkins, their defensive coordinator Adam Fuller, and receivers coach Ron Duggins on Sunday. All were fired. Florida State 1-9. They're on pace for their worst season since they finished 1-10 back in 1974. So it's obviously been a very long time since they've experienced this kind of mediocrity. But it hasn't been that long ago either. Aside from that blip in the radar last year where they were incredible, where they were kind of stunk for a while before that too. So this isn't new. And who knows? This is just one of those like try to save my job type of things. But I don't know that it's going to work here for Norvell. They're probably going to can him too.
That's more what it seems like, and maybe there's some agreement where they whoever comes to he did obviously he's not going to pick the coordinators now. He had his chance to pick those two, and it didn't work out. So maybe they go and get a hired gun. Maybe Wink's available next year, and they bring him in from Michigan after their staff gets a overhaul as well. But yeah, they're gonna probably I guess maybe he's lucky and gets one more year. I honestly don't see how you can do it though with one win. It's like they're not gonna win another game this year. There's no way. Like that's I mean that's a bet even I'm willing to make. I just don't see who they're gonna beat. So
Mm-hmm.
we know you can say stuff, but I was like I actually put some money on that one because I don't see how that's possible. And so I guess that buys him another year. But then it's like how are the fans gonna have any like type of confidence, or what's that stadium gonna look like? Like who's gonna how many people are gonna want to go to a game? Thinking that they're gonna have any type of competitive team after kind of the disaster that this season was. So um, I don't maybe I don't know. Who knows? I just how do you give them another year? But that's what happens when they get rid of these coordinators. There's kind of, I guess the scapegoat for the head coach is how it usually plays out. So
Hmm.
to me, that's what makes me think he's going to get another season, just because he's kind of, you know letting the administration,
Yeah, setting
say,
that
okay,
foundation. Yeah.
yeah, let's go get, a big name coordinator, and then we'll try to see if we can get something going after this. But yeah, that's I mean, you mentioned the history thing. It's like, I mean, outside of, Bobby Bowden had a good run for like, about 25 years or so, but even towards the end of him, he struggled. So
Hmm.
if maybe somebody like outside of our age range, like a little bit younger, like in their 30s, I don't really remember Florida State being like a name in college football, and that's it's kind of, maybe it was more of like I guess maybe like he Bowden was like the kind of the exception or the blip on the radar, and this is maybe more like what it's like in Florida, and is just like more of an established program.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you got Miami too. I mean, this just
Yeah.
like a lot. Like
Yeah. There's a
you're
lot of
competing
competition.
against
Yeah.
three big schools there. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and I think
Florida,
what
Central Florida.
yeah, what's yeah, yeah, biggest school in the country.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I think too, related to this, obviously, is the week before, Florida came out and said that they are supporting Billy
Yeah.
Napier and he's coming back next year for sure. They've already made that announcement. Now this brings up an interesting thing that I heard from some other guys talking about, and I guess I probably had crossed my mind, but you don't really dive into the scenario until it really happens. So, obviously, with all these coaches, before the NIL world existed, it started to become a thing where you had this insane, ridiculous buyout built into all these guys' contracts. Well, that money has now become a lot more valuable than it was before. Boosters were okay before with just saying, "Oh yeah, well, I'll
Just pay it
pay
off.
that
Yeah.
money to
Yeah.
get rid of that guy." But now they're looking at that $20 million or whatever it may be for some of these guys and saying, "How many players could that get us?" Because we can now use that money to do that. So I wonder if that mindset's going to change a little bit, where you're going to give guys maybe a little bit more time because you're going to take that money and invest it in players and see if you can turn it around rather than burning it on just getting another coach. It's an interesting argument.
Well, I think in some cases it might turn out to be a good thing, because I do think it got to the point where there's a little bit of a short leash when it comes to some
Mm-hmm.
situations. But to go from a national title contender to a one-win team,
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what players you lose or what happens, I think that's kind of the evidence is right there in front of you. If you want to, that's in Florida State's case, not Florida's,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. Don't want to make people think I'm mixing the two up, but that to me, that's that the evidence is there. If you want to go ahead and try again, go for it. But to me, it's like there's the proof's in front of your face. If you just want to say we're gonna try to you know honor the contract and play it out, then that's fine. That's a different situation. But I don't think most of these schools are thinking that
No.
they want to win, and they want to win now.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It's something to keep an eye on down the road if we do start to see those changes. And I think that also may start to affect the way some of these contracts are written down the road too.
Mhm.
You might not have those buyouts like they were before, because I think schools are starting to realize that just keeping this guy isn't the biggest deal in the world anymore. So I don't know. It's an interesting balance of where these funds are now being spent that could change things a little bit. Um, Only other game this past weekend that I guess we didn't talk a whole lot about, and I honestly didn't get to watch a whole lot of it, but it was an impressive win. You mentioned Alabama, 42-13. They kind of laid the whooping there on LSU. Look like, the Alabama, I guess, that you have in your mind of what they can be, as far as the talent is concerned, and certainly put one all together. And, well, hell, the way things have shaken out now in that league, here they are again, maybe right back in the thick of being the ones that you're going to think may come out on top of it.
I think like style points, that term was invented in college football. It always seemed like, even back when the days of the polls, like you win by kind of compare scores and be like, they really so. And even now with the way the playoff is, where you got so many like teams, when you do, I know it's more of a college basketball thing, but the blind resume is like often shown, like to be like, who would you pick? And some of these teams, it's going to have like identical, because all you really have to go off is the win loss record, and then you're going to start looking like who'd they play, who'd they beat, strength of schedule type thing. and what is a third, a 30 point win over a top 15 team within
Yeah.
your conference. That's going to look pretty good. So I mean, they got work to do. Everybody does in that league, especially if it ends up, man, with that 7-way tie is going to be that'd be books written about that type of thing. But well, maybe not in the SEC. Might be more like a with like a audio book or like a read along or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see the?
Storyboard.
I don't know if you caught. Yeah, you caught the freaking zinger that. Not that he has probably more room to talk, come from Alabama, but Saban really laid the wood there to what's his name, Skeens on the
Oh
game
yeah.
day.
Oh yeah.
He said something about doing some research for the show, and freaking Saban used quips right back, and he was actually pretty quick, so I give him credit for this. It's
Yeah.
not sometimes people tell these jokes on these little studio shows, and you can tell like, oh, they planned this ahead, or somebody
Mhm.
wrote this for him or gave it to him. But I mean, basically, he just said, "Is that the first research you ever done come from LSU?"
Yeah.
I was like, hey man, give him credit. I don't really ever care for the dude just because his attitude, is a media hater, and now he's can't find a camera he doesn't love, but whatever, those cream pies will take him out soon enough. The little Debbie will have the last laugh. But either way, like I thought that's pretty clever. But for back to Alabama, that's a big win, and I think that'll kind of definitely boost that resume and strength of schedule type of thing.
Yeah, and obviously when it comes to the playoff, if that last game would have went differently there, and Utah actually got the win that we thought they deserved,
Ooh,
those
they might be right in there, y'all.
three
Yeah.
well, and three of those teams that were on the top line would have lost in the same weekend. It's like, here we go. This is buckle up. This is gonna be one hell of a ride.
When I get why you do it, because you have to have like an idea of like who's there, and obviously it's a lot of it's for TV and just like
Mhm.
ratings and to get interest and that stuff. But I mean, you literally, I know you said it last week when kind of the close of the show and towards the end. It's like this ain't gonna be. We'll go back and compare, but that first bracket's gonna be probably nothing like what we end up with. But that's a good thing, and we're fine with that. It's not like we're saying it's totally bad and they're wrong for doing it, but it's there's so much. Even now, what do you got? I mean, 3 games is like a lot in college football. Like so much stuff can change in just 3 weeks or
Mhm.
4 weeks, I guess, if you have a bye here at the end.
Yeah. Uh, one thing that was funny that I guess we alluded to this on our picks show this week was there were a lot of people that were making fun of the show and like how utterly like incomprehensible these things were that they were putting up on the screen because they're using two different sets of rankings. Like one is the actual bracket seeds, and then the other one is the playoff football rankings that they come up with, so it's separate. And like, what the hell are we trying to do? Like, we're trying to promote this sport and make it more exciting, and you guys are trying to make it impossible to understand.
Well, and I like that, you get an idea of who's in the bracket, but with the fact of it, you can't put it out the first week of the season. So, I mean, honest, and I think they should literally, somehow, I don't know, they blend it into the AP poll or something, and you have I don't know, some type of come together agreement with like whoever the committee is, and you
Mm,
just like kind of make that your top 12
yeah, yeah,
when it gets to like that week. So you got your AP poll all the way until what was it, week 8? Was that the first one that came out? Week 9, I don't, whatever it
yeah.
is.
I can remember.
Whenever I think they go by a date, whatever it was, November. What is it, November 6th or 5th or whatever the hell it was. But like somehow, because yeah, it's like, well, we ranked this or like that. Even and it was even kind of when you just had the two polls, it was always kind of like dumb
Yeah.
because it's like, well, if you weren't ranked the same, it's like we're 7 and 11 sometimes. Or it's like we're getting a Slurpee, or are we talking about how good your team is? Like it was always like something like,
Oh
and I know a lot of teams were ranked the same, but if you weren't, it was kind of dumb always. So, and we're not the only ones to know this or say this or think it, but it's like when it comes to that coaches poll, the coaches aren't voting. They don't care. I mean, it's like they got more things to do than vote for the other teams, and if they are voting, how are they going to watch any game besides theirs? Maybe catch bits and pieces, but that poll. I mean, I get the concept of it. It's just it's not really feasible to do it like you'd want to do it with
yeah,
coaches picking
yeah,
who the best teams are.
yeah, yeah. Before we move on to looking at next week's schedule here, real quick, in a few games, we already kind of brought this up, but I did want to, I guess, point it out a little bit because it's one of those fun, heartfelt type things. But the tribute piece that ESPN did put together there on game day for Kirk Herbstreit's dog Ben. If you watched it, and if you haven't watched it, then get the box of tissues ready next to you, because I was friggin' balling after I watched that thing, and he was balling on set when they tried to introduce it.
I mean, I get you're looking for the drama, but it's like, dude, why did they even try to have the voiceover thing? I was like, dude, you did that. That's enough. Like, why did they have him try to talk on TV? And when Corso was trying to help him out, but there's only so much he could do for him.
Yeah. And I will say that, like, there's been lots of times in my life too. Like, I would like to think that I'm a person that is very, like, capable of delivering like some sort of speech or eulogy, for somebody, just because of my background and what I've done. But man, being able to do it in the moment and not just choking up like obviously Kirk did there. Huge respect for those people that can do that. It's really, really hard.
Well, and even when it's not an emotional situation, just like addressing like a thing, even when you're like, professionally trained, your brain kind of, you something comes up during the thing, some, damn kid starts crying, or, someone hits the lights in the back of the room and it gets, like whatever, like something always, something random happens and it kind of throws you off, let alone you add like that much emotion. Cause I'm sure there was I know like a lot of there's like, kind of seemed like it was gonna be like a little bit over the top with how much they were talking about. But then when he finally, which I'm glad he did, he finally said, "Well, this is why, because he's sick and he's probably gonna die." Because people kind of got tired of him, like, "Stop showing your stupid ass dog all the time." And I was like, "Well, I mean, at some point, I was like, well, yeah," but I was like, "I don't mean, do what he wants. I mean, if ESPN don't care, whatever you do, you don't have to watch it, bro." But then once he said that, it really kind of backed off and kind of seemed to be more like people kind of having his back and supporting him, because I guess it was more like, it almost was like similar, like he didn't call it that because I think it was like actually his dog and more of a like personal relationship, but it was like emotional support thing is how it really started. Because he just was traveling so much that he's like was away from his family all the time and was just kind of felt alone. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, especially in the business. Like, you want these like awesome jobs, high paying jobs, but I mean, there's a lot of people that would trade place with him, so it's not like we need to feel bad for him. He's like making shit ton of money, and he has like an awesome, great position. I mean, he's earned it, so don't get me wrong. But like, there is a lot of the like stuff that kind of comes with it. Isn't obviously you're not going to talk about it. Like, there's kind of a lot of shit you got to eat to get to that point. Put it that way.
Yeah, and if you've watched they've been doing that little segment recently too, where they show like his travels for the week too.
Like
it's
that.
just incredible. Like, God, that sucks.
I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm like, I don't even, that to me, that part of it doesn't seem like that. Like, I would be like, dude, I'll call the games or I'll do game day. I wouldn't necessarily want to do both.
Yeah.
Unless it was like something where it's like the games where game day is.
Yeah.
Or even like, let's say you have whatever game day in LA, and then you got a game up in Oregon, or like even over like in towards like UNLV Boise State or something reasonably close.
Make it close.
Like, that'd be one thing. But it's like sometimes this dude's barely making it freaking an hour and a half or two before the game. I was like, is that really necessary? I think you'd have I don't know, maybe part of me thinks like, well, there's some qualified individuals that could do it too, but I mean, they like him, so they're gonna fit to his needs and get him to the games they want him to call.
Yeah, you think you'd make it a little bit more feasible, but that's what happens. But yeah, if you haven't seen the bit, I encourage you to do so. Obviously, especially if you're an animal lover, like a lot of us believe that we don't deserve dogs, and that would be a perfect example why. It's really pretty cool. I did see that he had his other young dog running around the set this week, so maybe he's going to continue the tradition. I don't know, but anyways, kind of a cool story.
I told my friend when my wife bought that, I said, you realize dogs die, right? That's like, I've always liked that, but that's why I didn't want to give him, because I was like, doesn't matter what you say, like, you're gonna get attached to this sucker, and then it's gonna be like, so that's my only thing with him. I'm like, that's why I never had him myself, because I'm like, we're in it now, but that's why you don't, because like, you can't do anything about that. That's just the way it goes. So.
Yep, it's tough. All right, so looking ahead here to next week, a few games that we maybe think are interesting. We can just kind of bounce a few off here. I think there are obviously a number that will be very impactful. We get this late in the season, you're going to have some anyways, naturally. But Clemson at Pitt is kind of an intriguing matchup there in the ACC. That's one of the early games there in the weekend. Two teams that are just still kind of hanging in there a little bit. Seems like it's been a little bit rougher for them lately, but they're still in the mix. And then you've got, as far as other major, there's not a lot of other major top 25, I guess, matchups against each other, but other teams will be involved in some games. The big one will be to see if Georgia can bounce back. They host Tennessee coming up here this weekend. That'll obviously be a big game, and maybe a bigger opportunity now for Tennessee than you would have thought going the other direction, because Georgia just feels like they're really on the slide, like you kind of mentioned. But that'll be an interesting game. And then I will be a little bit intrigued too to see if that BYU scare carries over at all as well. Kansas, like I said, finally seemed like they put something together against Iowa State. Now, I largely think that was a lot of Iowa State's misgivings, but still, they're a team that can be dangerous enough to scare you, and they do go take on BYU this week, so that'll be another one I'll have an eye on. Any others you're kind of taking a look at?
The team that they played with, you mentioned, be like Utah and Colorado. I know it's we try not to pick the because the consistency, we don't never it's going to be there, and that was like a big rivalry game, so it was easy for them to get up. But being a 10-point underdog, they obviously like to play the role of the underdog or the spoiler. So here's another chance, and it's that 11 a.m. kick, especially. It's in Boulder, so it should 10 o'clock local time, not the 9 o'clock for the total West Coast.
Yeah.
But either way, that's still interesting. Makes it a little different. They're playing that early in the day. Another one that kind of caught my eye. I'm not gonna make a play or anything on this. I just thought it was funny that SEC always sneaks in their weird non-conference games, and Alabama's playing Mercer. And here's a trivia question: how many times has Mercer and Alabama played when Mercer had the better record? I mean, they're gonna get throttled. Don't get me wrong, but they're coming in at 9-1, and Alabama's 7-2. So funny. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like, that's like one of those that stupid Bear guy, isn't that what he gets called?
Bear, yeah.
He'll come up with that. I'm sure that's something right up his alley. So I just thought that was interesting. But there's not a ton of, like you said, like big matchups. But then maybe Arizona State, Kansas State, both 7-2.
Yeah.
Could be interesting. After dark kick, and then even I guess Tennessee, Georgia. You said bounce back, so that would be one to watch there. But for the ranked matchups. Other than that, we're just gonna have to play it by the ear here and kind of see how the week plays out with any type of injuries. Nothing. I don't even see any like crazy I know they have games, but even like some action that I want to dive into just yet. Although Toledo's looking pretty nice there on against Central Michigan on Tuesday. But yeah, this isn't anything that catches the eye off first glance. I mean, you would have thought. And I wanted to look at those Friday nights, but those are all kind of stinkers this week.
They are.
So it might be sometimes when we don't think as good as when it's good. So we're going to have to hold on to that, hold on to those dreams and say, do it for Ben.
Yeah. And that's when the picks get good sometimes too. Some of those stinkers. Yeah. We're not afraid.
A lot of totals this week.
Yeah, we're not afraid to be a sicko. We'll watch some of those.
Oh, hell no. We can, that would be, that's the dream, just to be a full-time sicko. But not in this college football way, not the Florida basketball coach way.
Yeah, no doubt. That might be a topic for next week's show. There's a lot to unpack in that one.
Too many details yet to unfold. But if you haven't heard about it, maybe or maybe don't Google it. Either way, it sounds like there's some trouble coming.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. And speaking of that, we're getting hot and heavy into college hoops now too. Obviously, KU and North Carolina had an interesting game this past week, so we'll start diving into a little bit of that here and there. So make sure you're following us on social media. If you're a Twitter user, at Cherokee CP, at SJM Bets. Those are the two handles. We'll put out stuff during the week that we find interesting with some of this maction perhaps here this week, so do that. And then, of course, the full picks video will come out later for you this week as well on our YouTube channel. So head on over to YouTube, like, subscribe, get the notifications there. And then, of course, like and share the podcast, all the major platforms, including our host here at Spotify. And then you can find it in all the other places, whether it be Amazon, iTunes, or also also through the YouTube channel as well. So lots of ways to take in the show. We hope you do that. Hope you have some fun again making some plays. We'll be back to give you some more of those later on this week. That's SJ Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another week of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.